For over a century, the land of Israel and Palestine has been at the center of one of the most deeply rooted and complex conflicts in modern history. The struggle for territory, identity, and self-determination has defined the lives of millions and shaped the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. But to understand how we got here, we must go back to where it all began. The seeds of conflict were planted in the late 19th and early 20th centuries with the rise of the Zionist movement. European Jews, facing widespread anti-Semitism, pogroms, and persecution, sought a homeland where they could be safe. Their eyes turned to Palestine, a region that was then under Ottoman rule. But it wasn't until 1917, with the British Balfour Declaration, that their vision gained international support. The declaration, made by the British government, promised support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, without consulting the Arab population that had lived there for centuries. This marked the beginning of tensions between the growing Jewish immigrant population and the Arab inhabitants. As Jewish immigration increased under British rule, so did friction between Jewish and Arab communities. Protests, riots, and violent clashes erupted throughout the 1920s and 1930s. When World War II ended and the horrors of the Holocaust came to light, international sympathy for Jewish refugees surged, and the pressure to establish a Jewish homeland intensified. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a plan to partition Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, but Arab leaders rejected it, arguing that it unfairly favored the Jewish population. When Israel declared independence in 1948, war broke out immediately between the newly established state and surrounding Arab nations. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced, an event they call the Nakba, the catastrophe, marking the beginning of their struggle for nationhood. Meanwhile, Israel secured its independence but faced continued hostility from its neighbors. With each war, Israel expanded its territory, capturing the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem in 1967. These territories remain central to the conflict today. The Palestinian people, left without a state of their own, lived under Israeli control, leading to growing resistance. In 1987, a new force emerged, Hamas. Unlike the secular Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, Hamas took an Islamist approach, rejecting all compromise with Israel. As Hamas carried out attacks, Israel imposed strict economic and military restrictions on Gaza. The cycle of violence continued, fueled by grievances on both sides. Fast forward to today, and the echoes of this history still shape the war between Israel and Hamas. With deep historical wounds, demographic shifts, and external influences, including Iran's support for Hamas, this conflict is more than just a territorial dispute. It is a battle over history, identity, and survival. In this video, we will explore why this war has occurred, delving into the historical grievances, political tensions, demographic shifts, and external influences that have escalated the conflict. Stay with us as we unravel the history and realities of the Israel-Hamas War. The Israel-Hamas War that erupted on October 7, 2023, is not an isolated conflict, but the culmination of historical grievances, shifting demographics, political fears, and regional tensions that have been simmering for decades. The conflict stems from a complex web of factors, including the decline in support for Israel among younger Jewish generations, the demographic reality of an increasing Palestinian population, the political and national security concerns of Israel's leadership, and Iran's active involvement in the conflict. Older Jewish generations, particularly those who lived through the Holocaust, the founding of Israel, and its subsequent wars, have been unwavering in their support for Israel. However, younger Jews, particularly in the United States and Europe, are increasingly critical of Israel's policies, particularly regarding its occupation of Palestinian territories. This generational divide is largely influenced by progressive ideologies, social justice movements, and the widespread dissemination of Palestinian narratives on social media, which portray Israel's policies as oppressive. Many older Jews fear that this weakening support among the younger generation could jeopardize Israel's legitimacy on the global stage, necessitating strong military actions to reaffirm its power and security. Another fundamental concern for Israel is its demographic trajectory. The Jewish majority within Israel and the territories it controls is at risk of being overtaken by higher birth rates among Palestinians, particularly in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The current demographic landscape is a growing concern for Israeli policymakers, as the Palestinian population continues to increase at a faster rate than the Jewish population. While Jewish Israeli women have an average birth rate of around 3.0 children per woman, Arab Muslim women in Israel have a birth rate of about 3.4, and Palestinian women in Gaza and the West Bank average around 4.1. This disparity presents an existential challenge to Israel's identity as a Jewish state, leading to policies aimed at curbing Palestinian population growth while promoting Jewish immigration and settlement expansion. The fear among Israeli leadership is that if Palestinians achieve numerical superiority, they could push for a democratic one-state solution, where Palestinians would demand equal voting rights, potentially ending Jewish political dominance. Politically and strategically, Israel has employed a range of policies to maintain its Jewish majority and national security. These include the expansion of Jewish settlements in the West Bank, the implementation of strict residency and border controls to limit Palestinian mobility, and laws restricting Palestinian access to Israeli citizenship. Additionally, Israel has actively promoted Jewish immigration through programs such as Aliyah, which encourages Jews from around the world to move to Israel. Without these measures, Israeli leadership fears that a future Palestinian demographic majority could result in political shifts that threaten the state's Zionist foundations. This fear is compounded by regional dynamics, particularly Iran's support for Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups. Iran views Palestinians as part of its broader sphere of influence and provides substantial financial, military, and intelligence support to groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. This support is driven by both ideological and strategic objectives. Iran sees itself as a champion of the Palestinian cause against what it perceives as Western imperialism and Zionism, and it uses its backing of Hamas as a means to exert pressure on Israel and counterbalance U.S. influence in the region. By funding and arming Hamas, Iran aims to keep Israel engaged in a prolonged conflict, thereby preventing it from focusing on larger regional threats, such as Iran's nuclear ambitions and military alliances. Iran's involvement is not merely an expression of solidarity with the Palestinians, it is a calculated geopolitical move. Iran's leadership understands that Israel, despite its military and technological superiority, cannot afford prolonged wars on multiple fronts. By engaging Israel through Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran is effectively testing Israel's military capabilities while maintaining plausible deniability. Additionally, Iran's support for Hamas strengthens its standing among Arab and Muslim populations, allowing it to position itself as a defender of Palestinian rights while challenging normalization efforts between Israel and Gulf Arab states. With the growing normalization of Israel's relations with countries such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE, Iran sees its support for Hamas as a way to undermine these diplomatic efforts and assert its influence in the broader Middle East. Ultimately, the Israel-Hamas war is not just a matter of territorial disputes or ideological differences. It is a reflection of deeply ingrained political, demographic, and regional anxieties. Older Jewish generations fear the erosion of support for Israel among younger Jews. Israeli policymakers worry about losing a Jewish majority, and Iran continues to manipulate the conflict to serve its strategic interests. The confluence of these factors has created an environment where war seems inevitable, with each side perceiving itself as engaged in an existential struggle. Unless these fundamental issues are addressed, the cycle of violence will persist, ensuring that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains one of the most enduring and volatile crises in modern history. That wraps up our deep dive into the Israel-Hamas conflict and the historical, political, and demographic factors driving it. This is a complex and evolving situation, and understanding its roots is crucial to making sense of what's happening today. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing you in-depth analysis on global issues. Also, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the discussion going. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.